each one of those folks. So they are given a stake radio when they get assigned to or when they get called. Everybody else buys their own. We don't buy radios for the normal membership. Everybody buys their own. We have a lot of families that what they do is like Christmas time, that's their Christmas presents. They buy them and get them out to their kids and the rest of their family. I tell folks as well, one radio is going to do you no good. You know, if you've been in the military, the old line is 2 is 1 and 1 is none. You have to have a minimum of 2, obviously, if you're going to communicate as a family. And even more, because like with my family, we keep them in our glove compartment. I mean, I have radios in my truck, but we keep radios in our glove compartment, all that. So when we're about, my wife is an amateur and a GMRS licensed operator, but we keep them around, and I tell families, keep them in your glove box. We have families that actually give them to their kids when they walk to school in the morning. So they'll have a radio in there. They don't give them phones, they give them radios. And so they will call on the radio when they get to school. They will call mom when they're on their way home from school. They'll do all that fun stuff. And teachers love it because they don't have a phone to play with while they're at school. So so we have some stakes that do it and some don't. I would say the majority of stakes do not purchase the equipment for their leadership.
So I've got a question. Steve, this is Steve, KB7ITU. One thing that I think it'd behoove to mention here also, and I'm sure you've run into this yourself, but especially where we're emergency communicators for the church, we need to be aware of type acceptancy for the radios and also legalities for call signs and that kind of thing, because I know that in our area that we have had a lot of operators that are operating on GMRS radios for FRS, and non-licensed amateur operators and that kind of thing. And one thing that I might mention is if you are a GMRS operator and the legalities for FRS radios are that they cannot have a detachable antenna, right? So the handheld has to have an antenna that is solid on the radio. It cannot be removed. So if you're using anything but that for GMRS or for FRS, you're probably not legal. The other thing is the bail fangs are not type accepted for GMRS.
Well, I would correct you on one thing. The Radiodities and even Bofang now makes a radio that is Part 95 compliant only. They're not an open radio, and they do have antennas on them that are non-removable.
The UV5G.
So there are, I think Radiati is a GM30, something like that. So there are radios out there that are Part 95 compliant, that are not, that are in the Chinese radio realm. So just, and so the other thing we do too is, so here's the bad thing about GMRS, okay, is there's no license required. And so you have to help people understand, again, the legality of having a call sign and the requirements for having one. So on FRS, GMRS, anything over 2 watts, you have to have a license legally to do it, unless it's an absolute life or death emergency. So we do training classes for folks so that they know when they're using it, all of the times they have to identify all of those things. And then we go through and do classes. I just did one this last weekend where we do classes on what we call net etiquette. So how does the net work? Why are we doing what we're doing with them, and help them understand getting involved. I want to tell you real quick, and one thing that I did forget about on this is you got to realize this stuff is not just for church membership. I have people all the time try to set up their ward zones, and they want to put a little flag where all the members are in that zone. It doesn't matter. First of all, we all know how fast those things change if you've ever been a ward clerk. But more importantly, we're not there to just take care of our ward members. We're there to take care of everybody that's in the ward boundaries. Our bishops and stake presidents are responsible for everybody within the boundaries they lead. And so as you're looking at this stuff, here's the other part of that. We can get a ton of information to our civil authorities when an incident happens, instead of them having to be out in vehicles, instead of them having to drive around the communities trying to figure out what's going on, we have the ability really, really fast, if we are doing our due diligence and working with our civil authorities, whether that be areas, emergency management groups, if you've got any kind of the different groups that are out there, CERT groups, all of those things, if you're working within those, we can get a ton of information to civil authorities about what's going on in particular parts of cities, communities, because we can get the information really fast from folks that are looking out their front windows and looking at it. So all of this stuff, keep in mind, this is not just for members of the church.
David, thank you for your
Yes.
presentation. I have several questions, if I might.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I agree with you, the difficulty that I've run into is getting the information from the members to the stake, so the stake can call for resources.
Yep.
So, in your ward, for example, you showed the 12 or so different zones, and we're assuming that ward members and those who every household, let's put it this way, every household in that ward boundary is in a zone,
Correct.
regardless of church affiliation.
Correct.
And they would all be calling in. So in that ward situation with the 14 zones, are those 100 or so houses all calling into one frequency, one channel? Are they calling in separately? Are they calling into repeater? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have the zones. We have each zone. Well, let me take it back. So each ward is assigned an FRS frequency, and so the ward has to kind of do their due diligence and figure out, each zone, because we ask each zone to do their own net. So they get a report from their zone every week that they report to their ward about. And so we have them kind of, set up the times and places and when they're going to run their net so everybody's not talking at the same time. And then when they run their ward net, then they are checking in with their ward communication specialists of how many people participated in their zone nets as well. That's where we're getting all those numbers that I showed you.
So with 14 zones, we would assume approximately 2 zone nets a day at different times during the day. And then at some point, those 14 zone leaders will have a weekly meeting with the ward.
Yeah, so we do a ward, one ward. Well, so we tell them to do one. We do have wards that have multiple, but for the majority of it, it's one ward net a week. And same with the zones. It's one zone net a week, whatever day they want to do that. And most don't do it on the same day that their zone or their ward net is.
And so they're all using the same, like channel 2 or whatever.
Correct. Yes.
So in an emergency, if they're all on channel 2 and there's 150 houses or whatever, is that just radio management as far as net control?
Net control.
Yep. That's why we're running our nets, so that people learn how they run, how the net etiquette, how they run, so everybody's not talking all over each other. The other thing we do too is we correspond with the stake next to us, so that we make sure that the wards that kind of butt up to each other on a stake level aren't on the same frequency. So we spread that around as well and have the stakes coordinate with one another as well.
So do you find a single frequency for an entire ward boundary is better than having 14 different frequencies?
Yes.
And
it's a nightmare to manage, number one, for the ward communication specialist. But even worse is if you've got outside stakes that are all using these same frequencies, which stake are you in? What are you doing? I mean, so we have found, and trust me, when I first did this, I did it the other way. 20 plus years ago when I first set this up, when I first got called to do this stuff, and it was a complete nightmare. We have found that once you get them involved in a net, they understand how the net works and how they speak and get into the net, then it helps them understand and it really cuts back on the amount of traffic that's going on. It's like everything else, that initial part of the incident is going to be super busy. But once everybody kind of gets their information in, because you got to realize, unless it's a pretty good size event, not all of these zones are going to be affected by it at times. And so the ones that aren't affected are going to go away. The ones that are minimally affected are going to go away, and you're going to be concentrating on the few that are really, you know, being affected by it, unless it's a big emergency. But as long as people start, you know, work on the nets and check in on a regular basis, they get the idea and it works out really well.
Okay, so are they checking in on a simplex or are they using repeaters?
It depends. If they've got a license and the ward runs a GMRS. So if the ward is small enough, a lot of our wards don't run a GMRS net. It's all simplex. People learn how to relay through the ward. If it's a bigger, more spread out ward, then they will run a GMRS net. Just kind of depends on how the ward is set up and how the ward emergency communication specialist wants to do it.
Okay, with 21 repeaters in the Spokane area and only 8 repeater channels, do you use duplicate channels or frequencies and for those 21 repeaters?
Oh yeah, they're different tones. So tones are different on them, and they're spread around. So again, I told you 21 for the coordinating council. So that covers all the way, you know, down to Grangeville and, you know, south. So it's not all 21 I'm sitting right here in Spokane.
Okay.
I have a real important question, Dave. Sorry, Dave. There's a question about CTCSS tones. A lot of people will buy, at least we found this, will buy just pretty much any radio, and our CERT team did the same thing. And 80% of the radios didn't allow traffic on it. I mean, it was just filtering out because of the tone. So that's part of your net, just, you know, making sure you all have the same tones, because some of them come just paired to the radios that you buy together. And, you know, they don't do that. But that's like the first thing, you know, make sure everybody's on the same tone if you're going to, you know, keep them programmed 1 through 22.
Tones.
Yeah. We don't use tones. It's just one more thing people have to try to remember. And so we don't use them at all. We do for the repeaters. We don't have any choice. We have to for those, but for the normal simplex stuff, we don't use tones.
And that's why I was just bringing it up, is that you'll want to have those cleared, because almost all the radios have it programmed that way. And it's like, why can't I talk to them? It's like the #1 question.
Yeah, and that's why I said make sure too when you buy these things that you can use them on repeaters, because there's a lot of them you can't.
So one of the issues that we have with not using tones is the fact that you know, we have other people from outside of the area that's talking right over top of us, and you get all the kids out there playing with their bubble pack radios, and you get bleep 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 every time you turn around. But another thing that you need to realize too is even if you're running tone, right?
You're just walking on people.
No, well, no. If you're using tone and the person transmitting in your group keys the radio and opens your tone, it's going to open it up for everything else to come in anyway. You're going to hear everything else, all the other stations coming in. Once your radio is activated, you'll still hear everything, unless and then once it's released, of course, and goes back quiet, then it blocks everybody else out. But when you key that radio with a sub-audible tone and activate everybody else's radio, they're going to hear everything around them.
I will make a comment on that as well. So yes, you're correct. You're going to hear it. The other thing that we have found is if you get on the radio and you just simply ask, just like we do in amateur radio when we start a net, we're running some emergency communication stuff right at the moment. Can you please stay off the frequency for the next 5 or 10 minutes and let us do our thing? The vast majority, including kids, will get off of the frequency and stay off of it. Yes, you're always going to have, you know, just like we do in amateur radio, you got the idiot that won't do it and wants to be a pain. And guess what that is, though? That's training, because that's going to happen in an emergency. And so it helps your people learn how to deal with that when you're on a weekly net. And so we use them as training opportunities as well.
It would seem like in an emergency, you'd have a lot more problem with people trying to communicate outside of your organization. And that could be a major problem. This is all organized, assuming that you basically have control of the FRS or GMRS frequencies. But it seems like in an emergency, a widespread emergency, you're going to have, I mean, everybody and their dog has an FRS radio, and if they start trying to communicate with their family and communicate with everyone else, it seems like it's going to be a real problem to your organization.
Well, I can tell you in the 5 major events we've used this system. Yes, we have it. And again, if you think amateur radio is going to be any different in a big emergency, if you've not been in one, it's the same thing. You've got all kinds of people who aren't used to dealing with nets and don't really care what else is going on because theirs is the most important thing. You can get around it and you can bring them into your net and help them understand that, you know, if everybody's on this net and it's organized, and they will understand really fast as they watch it that it'll help them communicate a lot better with their people as well as us communicating with ours. So it's just working with people. And again, if you're doing it weekly, people are hearing it. They know there's something going on there. And the other part is you'd be amazed how many people don't use these in an emergency. Their kids are playing with them. You know, they're doing all that stuff that you hear, just normal stuff. But in an emergency, it's funny how many people forget they even have them
Another
that
thing,
aren't used to using them.
another thing you need to remember about having tones turned on, and like your speakers talking about that in an emergency, these people are going to start crying for help. Well, if you are on a tone, you can't help them because you aren't going to hear them. But they're going to hear all these people talking to each other, trying to help people, and they're saying, "Hey, I need help," but nobody's hearing them.
Yep.
That's because your system is on a tone which you shouldn't be. You should be
Yep.
opened up so that you hear everything on that channel. Otherwise, somebody else also said a minute ago that the minute you start to transmit, you think it's a clear channel because you have your tone turned on, but it's not. You're actually going to be stepping on somebody else's communication. So tones are a no-go anytime.
Yep. You don't want to do them, but again, it all comes down to how often are you running nets? How many people do you have participating in them? And we have it all the time. When I run my nets, my GMRS nets, because keep in mind, GMRS are just shared FRS frequencies. And so I'll have people that'll try and get into my net that are on just a normal FRS radio going, what the heck is this? What's going on? And they're not in the, you know, so you can only hear them on simplex. But I'll get over on simplex and talk to them and tell them what's going on and tell them it's a community thing. And if they want to participate, we'd be more than happy to help them know what they need to do that. And I'll tell you, people are open to it. They understand really quick in an emergency but yeah, just leave the tones completely out because it's just another thing everybody has to try to remember it anyway. So don't even worry about it. And yes, it's going to be confusing. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's not confusing. But if you have good people that are good operators and people that are good net control operators, and we train them and we switch them around, that you will learn how to deal with it, and the folks that are on the net will learn how to deal with it. And it just like you do on amateur radio.
I have
That's
some
good.
questions.
That's
Hold
good
on,
to
hold
know
on,
that
hold
you
on,
have
hold on,
experience
hold
and have
on,
made it
hold
work.
on, hold on. We've got a pile up. We've got 4 people that are trying to get in. So
I was just going to say that's really comforting. That's always been something that's worried me. And it's comforting to know that you've had experience in actual emergencies and have been able to work through that and make it effective.
yeah, like I said, at the beginning of it, it's always chaos, but that, you know, I don't care what net you're on. But once kind of people settle down and, you know, the emotion gets out of it and people, you know, start to calm down a little bit, it works out really, really. That one we did for 20 days straight, 24 hours a day. I'll tell you what, at the beginning of that, it was not pretty, but we were able to get it under control and get people understood what's going on. I mean, I even had people go to different frequencies so I could help them explain to them what was going on and what they needed to do so we weren't affecting the net. And so you can do training and all that fun stuff too. So yeah, you just do whatever you got to do to make it work, but it will work. Absolutely.
David, I have a question. In our, so I set up a ward, FRS and GMRS net in our ward. Those who have GMRS are licensed, but we're all using the same frequencies, of course. We were doing it on a monthly basis. We had as many as 50 people individuals checking in. So when a father checked in, that was one check-in. If his kid checked in, that's two check-ins. So we were having individual people check in, and then it was felt that we were having them too often, so that they're now quarterly. So my question to you is, how were you able to get ward and stake leadership on board with so many people joining the nets? That's my primary question. Is we can't help people if they don't have a radio. How do we get them to get involved?
So training. I mean, well, I'm going to, so give you an example. I'm going to a ward this Sunday, and going to do a class in a ward on getting their ward set up. And so all you can do, I'll do a class for one person. I don't care. But I will tell you, do not do your nets on a quarterly basis. I'll tell you right now, when it comes to really needing to use it, you're not going to be ready. And that's why I said, do them every week. It doesn't mean everybody has to check in every week, but you need to do them on a very regular basis, once a week at minimum. And so that everybody knows that it's always there on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, no matter what. And I will tell you, and word of mouth is huge. I mean, I've got people now, it's so hilarious to me. I'll have people come up to me and go, so Dave, I was just talking to my cousin who's in Salt Lake, and they've never heard of this. And I'm like, well, too bad for them. And they're like, well, they want to know how to get something set up in their ward. Well, tell them to call me. I'll be more than happy to help them out. So word of mouth is a huge part, and the church is really funny. When one ward's doing something and the other ward's not, somebody wants to know why that ward's doing something and we're not. And yeah, we have people up here so right now I've got 14 stakes in the Spokane Coordinating Council. Only 10 participate in this program. We have 4 wards that do nothing. We have one, the stake president's so dang hostile. He actually sent a cease and desist, actual legal cease and desist letter to one of the ward communication specialists that was called by a bishop to run a ward communication deal in their ward in his stake. And he called me up and he's like, what do I do with this? I said, you take a copy of that to your bishop. That's who called you. You ask him what he would like you to do. Does he want you to keep going? Does he want you to stop? If he tells you to keep going, that's who called you, not your stake president. I said, now it becomes a problem with your stake president, your bishop, and they can work it out. But so we have some that see no point in this. Cell phones are going to save their lives. They've never had a reason to doubt that. And so it is what it is. But the nice thing is we have enough operators now that if one of those stakes were in a position where they needed help, we've got plenty of operators we can call on, and we can get people over to those areas and help as best we can. And so you're going to have people who just flat out won't do it, and that's fine. That's up to them. But I will tell you, the vast majority of people, even on a ward basis, I've got people in wards that their bishop and in stakes that their stake president will not participate in this. They check into my net every week because they want to be able to participate with something.
Hey, Dave, we've got a couple of questions from the chat, and then we have a couple of hands up.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
What's that?
Go ahead.
So the first question from chat is, how do you know that the radios you buy will work with each other?
So if you're buying an FRS radio that's already set up, it automatically will. Those are programmed when you buy them with the 22 FRS GMRS channels in them. Like the brother said earlier, you may need to check them to make sure the tones are up, but it'll be in the instructions of how to do that. Just turn them off. If you're buying one of the Chinese radios, so the Baofangs, Wushans, Radiodity, all of those kind, you will have to program them. They won't have anything in them when you get them. And so they will have to be programmed with the FRS and GMRS frequencies in them. But if you buy one right off the shelf in the bubble packs, they're already there. Don't have to do anything.
Okay, on that, Kevin, The Bofang UV5Gs come pre-programmed because they are a GMRS Type 95 accepted radio.
So do me a favor. Let's not talk about radios. That's a whole nother conversation.
Okay, but
People can talk to
they
people.
are automatically programmed.
Understood. Let's not talk about all the different radios because there's too many.
Yeah, it's a big discussion. Okay, next question. Are we supposed to wait for a ward calling, or can we get a system set up and just let the bishop know we can help?
Okay, so I can't take my name tag off. So I will give you the good answer. You need to be called. Do not start a stake or a ward communications system without your priesthood behind you. Now, when I say that, like I said earlier, there are people in wards and stakes that do not participate, that will participate in the ward next to them or the stake next to them or whatever it is. You can set up a communications program with your family anytime you want. You can set it up with neighbors anytime you want. The thing I would tell you is you don't dare call it a whatever your ward or whatever your stake name is. So like in my case, if I have not been called by my bishop, I am not going to do anything with my family or my neighbors or anybody and call it a Bella Vista ward net. You do not have permission from your priesthood authority to do that. So do not do that. I would tell you to go to your bishop and say, hey, bishop, if the Lord feels so inspired, or you feel so inspired as to allow me to do this, I am more than willing to do it. That is not going to your bishop and say, hey, this calling is the one I'm supposed to have, which we don't aspire to callings, but letting your leadership know that you're more than willing to help out with this stuff. Just like I had a brother years ago when I was in Vegas, he had gotten back into church, been inactive for years, and loved Cub Scouts. And he came up to me one Sunday and he said, would there be any problem if I went and told the bishopric that I'd be more than willing to be the Cub Master in our ward? I said, no. In fact, they'll love you. You're not asking to be, you're letting them know you are available and willing to do it. And if you do that, I tell you, I know a ton of bishops and stake presidents said, well, let's get you in. So you can do that, but do not call it your ward or stake net if you have not been called to the position.
And we have a hand raised by Winter Wolf. Come on, go ahead.
Thanks. So here within our ward, in the state ECS, so my ECS operator is maybe block leader, and then I pushed out radios to everybody into my block. I got research radios, they all bought them, some of them bought multiple, blah, blah, blah. My question is, and I think you kind of answered this, but I want to see if that's how you got it. How do you get them to participate fairly regularly? Because I was doing the twice a month thing, and I had 2 to 4 people that would check in consistently. So is it going to that every week? Does that seem to help kind of keep everybody a little more on track and checking in more frequently?
Yes.
Okay.
It does. And I'll tell you one other one since you brought it up. I will also tell you this. Don't get frustrated by this stuff. Okay? Let me give you a great example. I have a ward emergency communications specialist. He is called. Okay? He gets, I mean, literally no support from his ward. None of his leadership, nobody. This brother has run a net every Sunday night at 6:30 religiously for 5 years, and he is the only person that checks into that net, except for those of us that know he's there and check in as visitors. But he is there every week, and he's been doing it now for 5 years with never in 5 years having anybody in his ward check into that net.
All right. Well, because when you were talking about that, doing it on more of a weekly basis and not forgetting, and I think that really kind of hit home with me just trying to get just my block, not the whole ward, just my block. And and everybody wanted to participate, and everybody got, I went out, I said, I researched the radio, said, I'll program them, we'll do this, we'll do that. It's gonna cost you like $10 because buy them off of Amazon.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Like the 10-pack was cheaper kind of thing.
Yep.
Everybody bought multiple radios, but just getting that consistency of everybody checking in on.
And send out reminders too. Send out,
And I did.
you know what? Create a group.
Between group me and sending out emails, I'd send them out the day before. And I got this from Steve, because he does this to us to make sure that we don't forget.
Yep.
I send out group meetings and I was sending out emails, and finally I just kind of gave up towards the end of the, when winter started hitting, I'm just like, I don't know. And this has actually been good because I've actually had a couple of them that were the ones that were kind of checking in frequently saying, are we still doing that? Are we going to do that again? I'm like, well, I'm kind of vacillating. I would like it to be something we need to test those radios.
You know what? I will tell you too. When that list I gave you guys of all of the 6 things that people report to me on a weekly basis, I'll tell you what. Do more than just have somebody check in. Okay, give them an assignment. I mean, even I've done stuff. Literally, we'll do stuff where we'll say, okay, tonight we want you to walk 4 doors down from your house, or however you got to do it, and tell us, do they have a flag up at their house? What color is their front door? Give them an assignment to report in your net. I don't care what it is. How many people are in your home tonight? Any of that kind of stuff. Yeah, make it more than just getting on the radio and go, hi, I'm there. I mean, that's boring as all get out. So do something that you can have them actually report something. And I'll tell you, between that and doing them consistently, you'll get much more people playing.
Okay, I'll probably try to get back on that starting in March.
Yeah, and don't give up. Don't give up. Just keep going.
All right, thank you.
It's the major feed the horses. We got to feed the horses whether they want to be fed or not.
So one more question for you, Dave. How do you train non-amateur radio operators how to operate, including how to operate on radio nets?
The same way I do amateur operator. If you realize, so how many, I know there's a ton of amateur operators on this thing. So when you take your tech license, how much of your tech license actually tells you how to operate a radio? Very, very little. And so I used to do a class when I first got my license 20 plus years ago. I said, you know what? I've got to do something. So I used to do a class basically, it was titled, okay, you got your license, now what? And I would go, that class was how you operate a radio. I mean, literally how you push the talk, programming a radio, what tones are, what antennas, why do we use all these different antennas, different coax, all that stuff. I do the exact same thing for GMRS operators, because guess what? If they're going to get a GMRS license and now they can operate a mobile base with an outside antenna, they need to know about coax and antennas and power and all of that same stuff an amateur operator does. And so I do the same class. I just do it specifically to GMRS folks.
Question, Dave?
Yeah.
Are the repeaters, kind of a double question, are the repeaters primarily used for leadership, or are they used for the zone meetings? And who buys the repeaters and maintains them?
So they're used, so we don't have any repeaters that are specifically set aside for leadership. They participate just like everybody else. And all of the repeaters are just done by individuals, just like every amateur repeater. We do, let me take that back. We do now, as of 2 years ago, we do actually have an Inland Northwest GMRS radio club that is here in Spokane that got started up. And they've got 2 repeaters that the club has, but all the rest of them are just by individuals. Like me, I have 3 of them here in Spokane, in the Spokane Coeur d'Alene area.
And do you see those working long term? You mentioned you had that 20-day event. Were those repeaters able to stay up and powered?
Oh yeah. Mine's been up here in Spokane for 9 years. I still have repeaters that are down in Vegas that are still running. I mean, they're commercial radio, they're a commercial repeater. I mean, mine's on battery backup as well as the site that I have has got commercial power to it. But if commercial power goes down, then mine are on solar backup with batteries. It'll run for 10 days with no power. The site that I'm on will never go 10 days because the other things that are on that site are required to have power. And it's one of the first places that they set up because one of those sites is the sheriff's office site. So they're one of the top priority for getting power back on that mountain. But even if it did, my repeater will run for 10 days with no power to it.
So were interested people who said, I'll put up a repeater and then here's the repeater and anybody can use it?
Yep. Just like amateur repeaters, same thing.
That is a problem. There's no coordination for it really, and that is a big problem.
Nope, there isn't. But if you talk to people, it's kind of funny because here I didn't even know this until last year. I'm known in the GMRS community here in Spokane. I am the godfather of GMRS radio in Spokane because I was the first guy to put one up. And so I would assume that it's the same with you guys. GMRS is all of a sudden a big deal. And lots of people are doing it. And so we went through this little thing about 3 years ago where we had like 400 people decide they want to put up GMRS repeaters because everybody thinks they need to have their own. And it's the same in the amateur world. But what's interesting is that's all dropped. At one point, we had almost 50 repeaters up. And that has now back off. People have dropped their repeaters out and have just started using what's here because one, they don't want to deal, most people will put them up at their house, which isn't going to get a lot of range out of them. If you're going to have a repeater, find a decent site for it so you can actually use it as a repeater, not just a really strong base radio. And so a lot of people started putting them up and then they went, wait a minute, they weren't being used, all that. You have your onesie twosies that want to try and do a closed system. So you can't use it. The simple fact is it's just like amateur radio. You don't own the frequency. You may own the equipment that the frequency is running on, but you don't own the frequency. And at the end of the day, the only way to keep somebody off of a repeater is to turn it off. There's a limited number of tones and a lot of radios anymore. I can hit my radio and it'll tell me what the tone is. I don't even have to go look for it. So we had the little thing where a lot of people did it, and we are now, when somebody wants to put one up, we have a Facebook page for the Inland Northwest GMRS group. They'll put a request on the page and say, hey, I'm thinking about putting a repeater over here. And people are starting to be able to self-coordinate as opposed to what we do in amateur radio where we have an actual coordinator. So it's working out pretty well.
So we have multiple hands up. Let's start with Paul White.
Hi, this is Paul. I have two questions. Number one, you have lots and lots of net control stations, so you must be doing a lot of training with that. How do you get those people to step up to the plate? How do you get them trained? And the second thing is, when I'm net control station, I use printed forms that I created myself so that I know where to write and I can be quick and I can be accurate and I have my records. Do you guys use any sort of printed forms for your net control stations?
Yeah, everybody does. I do mine off of spreadsheets and then I print them out so I have a hard copy of them. But mine, when I'm on a net, I'm running off a spreadsheet for all my check-ins. I didn't show you, but here, let me do this. I'll show you the rest of my spreadsheet. I only showed you one part of it. Let me show you mine. So this is the one that's just my report page. Okay. If you come down here to the tabs. So this is my one that's my weekly. Come on, you can do it. This is my one that's weekly check-in by stake. So when I get to that part of my net where I'm doing weekly check-ins, this is our Simplex Net one. Same thing. It's all done by stake. Our GMRS one, all done by stake. And then I do a monthly deal on every ward. So this is monthly for the whole year. And then this is my years going back. So I'll take you back. Hold on, let me get to this one. I'll show you. See, the guys don't think I'm fibbing you. Actually, maybe I won't because I can't. Got something blocking my deal here. Let me see if I can get this out of the way. Give me a second here. Yeah, there we go. Come here. Dang it. I've done everything. It's getting in my way. So this is by stake for the years. And then this is my summary. So here, I'll take you back to where I began so you don't think I'm actually kidding you. So this was the first year I kept this. That was my average right there. 150 a week.
Wow.
And we've grown from that to 2,000 a week. So I'm just telling you, be persistent, do a lot of training, and it's a program of the church, guys and gals. It'll come. It'll take a little bit, and you got to work your tail off, but it'll come. And as you get people more and more excited about it and using it, it just kind of grows all by itself.
Okay, next, Cliff Connor has his hand.
Yeah, hi, Dave. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, no problem. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing it because I don't think you guys need to see that. So go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering, the map that you showed of the board showing the zones, how many average, or how many families on average did you have in each zone?
So the way we set ours up, so like in a city like where I am in Spokane, and obviously it's a little bit harder when you're rural. But what we basically tell people is don't make them any more than about 3 or 4 blocks. The idea is if you don't have a lot of people in that zone on radio, then you're going to have to go look at your zone and see what the condition is. And so if you can just go down the end of your street, walk a block either direction, or a couple of blocks either direction, get a quick, so you can do a quick check-in. If you got lots of people on radios, it's no problem. You never have to leave your house. So we try to keep them as small so they're and again, you want them small because you're using FRS radio, so you don't want to have to cover a huge area for these zones. So you want to keep them as small as you can. In rural areas, what we've done is you typically, even in a rural area, you'll tend to have these little clumps of homes, out in the country and stuff. They're not right next to each other, but you tend to have these little clumps. And so what we've done is we've asked them to run FRS for the little clump and have one guy that at minimum, one guy that has a mobile base, and then he can report into the ward ECS.
So you basically, all your net control operators have an external antenna.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're going to be a net control operator, you have to have a mobile base.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
You bet.
I have one question from the comments. Does training people and involving them in ward and state emergency networks make families more willing to share their emergency resources?
Yes, absolutely. We've noticed that too. Yep.
Dave?
Yes.
Darian Van Gorkum here from the West Richmond State. We've had our GMRS repeater.
Here's trouble.
We've had our repeater about a year, up at about 2,050 feet. We've had great success with it.
Yep.
So much so that I've got a lot of people all over getting on it. And there's a lot of repeaters now I'm seeing pop it up. I mean, almost all repeater channels are taken. So I went ahead and registered my repeater with mygmrsrepeater.com.
Yep.
And that way I kind of know that, well, I've established this is kind of where my repeater is.
Yeah, and that helps too.
I'm hoping by doing that, I'm not going to have somebody pop up and say, well, I've had my repeater here longer than you. You need to move your repeater somewhere else. What do you think about that?
So I registered. So for those that don't know, there's a site called mygmrs.com. A lot of GMRS operators and repeater owners register their repeaters on that site. So you can actually go on that site, put in the state and city you want to see where GMRS repeaters are, and it'll give you all of the repeaters that have been registered for that area with their tones and everything for the most part. And that helps coordinate stuff a little bit. So I would tell you, if you haven't had somebody tell you in a year that you're stepping on them, you're probably pretty good. So since Richland's here, I didn't realize you guys were here. So let me give you an idea of Richland, Washington. So they're kind of south of me. There's what we call the Tri-Cities down there. And I was just down there last summer and did some training for them and some multiple emergency preparedness fairs. Actually, I got my invite for next year already, for this year for June. But when I went down there, they were pretty much as stakes. They weren't doing a whole lot. There wasn't a whole lot going on at all. So we were able to set up a training meeting for every stake down there at one time when I was down there for an emergency preparedness fair. We did the fair, and then I did an actual training on how the stakes and wards can get their program started. And we were able to do that all at one time. And they are going nuts now. There are stakes. They just did their very first exercise here just a month or so ago. As a group, and they're taking off like wildfire. So I'll tell you, it's just like I told you, I will train one person, I'll train 1,000. I don't care. The more you do it, the more people get involved in it. Be excited about it. Don't just go in and be Mr. Monotone. I've got a whole presentation on why we do this. So I've got different slides from different presidents of the church that have given counsel on doing this kind of stuff. And so I just do it, and I just train, and I'll go anywhere. I don't care. Typically, if I have to go out of town, I'll call a member and say, hey, can I steal your couch for a night? So I don't have to pay for a hotel and not have to drive all the way down and all the way back. I mean, I go all the way over to the west side of Washington and train. I've gone down into almost all the way down through Medford, Oregon, which is almost California border, which is an 11-hour, 12-hour drive for me. But I will go and I will train. I'll do it on Zoom. I don't care. I'll do it just about anyway. I will tell you one thing I've done that's kind of helped people understand their cell phone is not going to save their lives. You know, because we all know this little guy right here is going to save everybody, right? It's always going to work. It's always going to be there for us. And I, for years and years and years and years and years, struggled. How do I get people to understand that is not the savior they think it is? And so I guess it was right before COVID, I was doing a training. I had 4 stakes. It was emergency preparedness fair, and I got asked to come in and train 4 stakes here in Spokane. Or excuse me, 4 wards in 1 stake, excuse me. And so I went in, and as I was in that meeting, again, I was thinking, how can I get it into their brain? And I got the most wonderful piece of revelation, one of those ones I can call my top 3 since I've been doing this for 25 years, on how to do it. And it has worked wonderful. I use it all the time now. So what I do when I go into a training meeting for getting wards or stakes involved is I will find out who is the highest ranking person in that room, whether it be Relief Society president, bishop, stake president, whatever it is. And I will get their cell phone number and I'll write it up on the board in front, and I will tell everybody, put this phone number in your texting app and don't do anything until I tell you to. And when I tell you to, you just send a text that says help, hello, hi, just short, sweet. And you keep sending that message until I tell you to stop. Because what's going to happen in an emergency? They're just going to keep doing it. And so I time it for 30 seconds. So I did a stake present here just a few months ago in the training I did. We had 60 people in the room, and they started texting. I have them turn up their phone volume and put it on the table on vibrate so everybody can hear it. And so that thing starts blowing up. And in 30 seconds, with 60 people in the room, that first counselor in the stake presidency got 730 texts. You explain to me how anybody is going to take care of that kind of traffic on a phone. His wife was sitting next to him and said, you and I are having a conversation when we get home. Because she saw it really fast. That is only a third of his stake. doing it. There are that number of messages. And so when you talk to people about the fact that a radio, the beautiful thing about radio, I don't care if it's GMRS, amateur, what it is, you are a giant conference room. Everybody's getting the same information at the same time from the same person with the same amount of everything behind it. And so you are able to help a ton of people. I tell people all the time, I don't care if you don't talk on the radio. The amount of information you can pick up just listening to nets in an emergency is amazing. Not only that, as you participate more and more on nets, you get to listen to voices. How many amateur operators have ever gone somewhere and go, oh, you're the face to that voice I hear on the net every week? It's always fun to put that voice and that name together. Well, guess what? It's the same thing if you're just on a net. That voice, if it's familiar to you in an emergency, guess what that does to you? It calms you down. You know that person. So it's a calming effect on them. And I'll tell you what, that piece of revelation I got for how to help people understand that phone's not going to save you, I'll tell you what, I've used that thing all over the place in the last 3 years, and it really wakes people up in a hurry.
Hey, Dave?
Yes.
Little example, we had that emergency simulation you mentioned about a month ago.
Yep.
We had, within 2 hours, most of our stakes, 63% of the members in our stake were contacted in person, and that information was communicated via radio to ward leadership, ward communication specialists, state communication specialists, and the stake high council, and the stake presidency. We figured about 1,800 people were contacted, their status confirmed, and that radio communication all within 2 hours for stake president.
Yep. It's amazing.
That cannot be done. That cannot be done by phone.
Yep, I agree. Yep.
David, can I throw this out there? So kind of talking what you're saying, with a group of 10 and just my blog, that was one of the things that I told them. I'm like, look, you're all going to be listening, and if there's an emergency that I got to go up to Steve to send it up the channel, but there may be some critical, but not necessarily non-emergency, you can go help. You can say, hey, I got so-and-so taken care of. I'm taking them blankets or whatever it is. Like you said, it's that kind of group conference chat, and then everybody's able to help each other. So that if I got to go out to Steve, give me some ITU to send more higher emergency, it's got to go further up the chain. It just makes it work so much faster, I think.
Oh, I agree. Well, and again, it makes people aware of that there are needs. If you're on a phone, because again, if they're on a, and imagine this. So what's going to happen in a real incident in your ward? Who's getting the first phone call? Come on. Who's getting it?
Probably the bishop of this.
The bishop. And then who's going to, when he doesn't answer, who's getting the next one?
First counselor.
Second counselor, elders quorum president, relief society. They're going to go right down the leadership. And guess what they're going to get? The same thing, because you can't do it. Even if you're on group meeting, the same thing happens. I mean, if you guys have ever seen when Kevin does your group meet things, how many people are all, I'm here. I mean, you're going to try and, you can't manage that. And so the beautiful thing about radio is, and they're sending that text to the bishop, not to a group of people. So nobody even knows that they need the help. You're doing it on radio. People know you need the help. And if they've got the extra stuff, you guys all know how it works. People are good. The vast majority of people are very good-hearted people and want to try and do what they can do. And they will do it. But if they don't know that there's a need, kind of like what happened in that fire with the folks that donated their livestock trailers and stuff, if they'd have been on a phone, nobody even known they needed that. And so with the fact that they were on radio and that was out there that they needed the help, then people were more than willing to come out and help. So it helps in a lot of different ways.
Hey, Dave.
Yes.
One other thing that I might mention, and Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because it may have changed since I checked on it, but in an emergency situation, another thing that's against cell phones is that if FEMA deems fit that they need to use the communications network with the cell phones are on, they can actually shut out the users and FEMA can use it all by themselves.
Well, they'll do that for a lot of different reasons. If
Right,
they
right.
expect terrorists or something involved, they're going to kill it real fast because you can do a lot of stuff with a cell phone nowadays.
Right.
So there's all kinds of. But even if they don't, I mean, what's the thing people use their phones for in an emergency now?
News, family.
No,
Taking videos of their.
taking videos and pictures so they can be the first ones to post it on social media, and that just kills bandwidth. And so you just end up just destroying the network. I'll give you another one. This has got nothing to do with this presentation, but it's here now, so I'm going to bring it up. How many of you know what an out-of-area contact is for your family, for emergencies? If you don't know what it is, in my particular case, I'll give you mine. So my out-of-my-area contact is my sister in Las Vegas. So if something happens here, I call my sister in Las Vegas, and all my family call her, not me. That way they can get the updates from her. I'm not bogging down the cell services here in Spokane, trying to get all those calls and text and all that stuff. I send it out to her, and our family is set up where other sisters call whoever. So do out-of-area contacts too, so you can do your part to help not take out the network. I mean, it's not going to be usable anyway, but at least do your part to try and help out. And it helps your family because that way you're not getting 500 phone calls when you're trying to do stuff, evacuate your family or whatever it is. You just send your updates to one person and the rest of your family calls them. Same concept. And I'm the same way. So that same sister, she's not an amateur operator, but I know a guy with HF 4 houses down from her that I can contact anytime I need to. So use these things that, use the tools that our Heavenly Father's been more than gracious to allow us to have. So, but phones are not the answer, folks. And the more you can help people understand that, the faster they will get over the radio, I'll tell you. And like I said, we use FRS and GMRS as our gateway drug. You get people on FRS and they start to see, wait a minute, this works. And you go, well, do you want to do more? Well, yeah. Well, then you need to get your GMRS license. And with that, then you can this and this and this. I mean, just a handheld radio, guys, you all know it. Handheld radio on an outside antenna does a whole lot for that radio if you get a license. You don't even need a mobile base. So there's all kinds of stuff you can do. But once people kind of get the bug, it's like everything else. And guys, GMRS is cheap.
Oh, yeah.
It is. It is just in the rate. I will tell you, 25 years ago when I did this the first time I ever did this, I went to a meeting. The way I got called in this is I was the emergency preparedness guy, brand new on the High Council. My state president calls me up 2 weeks after I got called and said, hey, we got a meeting with our Area 70 at the Bishop Storehouse this Saturday for something. They want all you here. I'm like, great. So we go there and they're like, hey, we're going to set up this communication thing with GMRS. So you need to go buy this radio. 25 years ago, that was an ICOM, 16 channels, $140. No keypad. You had to do all the tones with stupid little buttons on the side of it. Beep, 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 so many times. And it took me 2 weeks to figure out how to program 2 radios, $140 a pop. The GMRS license was $75 for 10 years back then.
5.
And they said, you got to go do this. This is the radio. They got AES, remember, Amateur Electronic Supply. We had one in Vegas at the time. They went down there and said, hey, we need these GMRS radios. And they're like, we don't do GMRS. We're amateur folks. Our Area 70, you ready for this? Our Area 70 gave them his credit card and said, if you'll bring in 200 of these radios at $140 a pop, I guarantee they'll be sold in 30 days. And if they're not, put the rest of them on this credit card. Our Area 70 did that. So I get done with this meeting on Saturday. My state president says, oh, by the way, you're also now the emergency communications guy for our state. Go get these radios. Because we started a net 2 weeks later, the Area 70 did. And we were ready to go. And compared to that, nowadays you can get radios. We didn't have online, we didn't have any of that stuff. The way you can get radios so easy now and so cheap and get on board with this stuff so fast that if you just help people understand why and how, the majority of people will do it. I tell you. But it's just training. Get out there and be part of your wards and stakes, and it'll come.
Dave?
Yep.
I think one of the best things we found with our simulation we had a month ago was we made sure the ward council had radios.
Yep.
Not only what we did is we hid 3 families in each ward that had an emergency happening. We assigned them an emergency. Then the ward had to go find them. And then they had to report to the ward communication specialist. At the same time, they reported to the ward council. And what was incredible was that the ward council finally got it. They saw how it worked. And we had several members with radios, and they were trying to coordinate care relief, and they found 4 additional people in the ward that had tractors that no one knew, and people that had trailers, and people that had chainsaws. And so all of a sudden, all these members said, I've got that, I can go coordinate.
And we're willing to let people use them.
So it's like they saw that, hey, all of a sudden the whole ward had the radios, could coordinate this care, and within, actually our ward had 98% contacted the entire ward, and within 45 minutes had the 3 members contacted, and relief, all organized, ready to go, and all kinds of new resources found out because ward members were on these radios, interjecting in that they have these resources to help. But the biggest thing was the ward leadership got it. We saw, hey, this is really cool. So
the light bulb came on.
The light bulb went on, and the next thing we told will be even better with more people. It's catching on like wildfire that way. But I would. You got to get your ward communications specialist to talk to your bishopric and get them on board if you can, and then hold a simulation so they can see how it works.
Yep, I agree.
Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate all of the participation we've had this evening. We've had people calling in from actually all around the country. I'm noticing all kinds of people that I hadn't even realized were on the call. We've got lots from Utah and some great people on the call that kind of joined us tonight. But Elder Carlton, we really appreciate you providing this tonight. It's been I think a great thing for everybody involved, and I can tell by all the comments, the messages that have been coming in to me directly that you've got everybody all excited, and they're all fired up to figure out how to use GMRS more effectively here. So thank you so much.
It's a wonderful tool, I will tell you that. So I hope it was worth everybody's time. So
yeah, I know it is. It has been great. So again, thanks everybody, and let's see. Steve Taylor, can you get your mic to unmute?
Can you hear me?
Thank you.
So, yeah, would you mind giving us a closing prayer, Steve?
I will.
Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, as we come before thee at the close of this training session, we're grateful for the evening that we've had, and Elder Carlson's wisdom and experience that he's been able to share with us. We ask for thy Spirit to be with us this evening, that we might be able to recall these things and be able to remember when it comes time to put them into service. And we ask that we might be able to help to inspire those who indeed have been called, and those people that have feeling that they need to be involved, that they might be able to be inspired and get involved. And we ask for blessing on those that are traveling or working this evening, that they'll be watched over, guided, and protected. And again, we thank thee for Dave's experience, and we ask for these favors and blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
thanks, everyone.
Good to see you, Dave.
You too, Steve.
Thank you.
Hey, Dave, this is Paul over in the Tri-Cities. I was going to ask the gentleman from Rexburg, I think his name was Steve, if he was available or if he was around when the Teton Dam broke. I lived in Idaho Falls at the time, and it was amazing on how quick the response of church assets, and I'm guessing ham radio operators got involved really quick to get a lot of those people out of the area. So it was the question I was hoping that I could ask Steve there in Rexburg if he was around at that time.
So just so you know, I have 10 people here in Spokane that all were at the time. Most of that 10 were at the time amateur operators, and yes, amateur operators played a huge role in that incident.
Yep.
So,
in fact, all of the entities except for ham radio lost their radio communication. Military, police,
Yep.
Hospitals, everybody lost communications except for the amateur radio operators. And so they had amateur radio operators riding around with everybody and relaying information back and forth. But yeah, that was
kind of like what happened in North Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I appreciate, Dave, all the stuff you're doing. Can't wait to get the next meeting when we start talking about our Meshtastic devices.
Yeah, we just did a training here last month on it. So that's another fun little thing that's got some pretty interesting stuff that we can use for leadership. So
I'd like to be involved with that. I'd like to see how you got that set up.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. We're just starting to really get it going up here, but it's so far. I've got a repeater up for that too. So.
Yeah, as soon as John can get up there and change his Yagi directional, we should be able to hit your repeater and be able to communicate with you via mesh.
Yeah, I can already see his down there. So 100, according to my route, it's 164 miles away.
Oh wow! Yeah, I've got tri-solar that's set up just in my backyard. So you may be able to catch tri-solar off.
Yeah, and this one right now, it's just here at my house. It's on my 30-foot tower at my house. Come spring, it's going to be up at my GMRS repeater site. So it should get out really well once I get it up there. So
I'll be looking forward to that, being able to communicate via mesh.
Yep.
So thanks, Kevin and Dave, for all your hard work, and keep doing what you're doing.
My mission just got extended again, so I know I'm not going anywhere for another year and a half.
It's till death do you part.
Yes, I do. Elder Stanford's pretty much told me as long as he's there, I'm going to be there. So,
hey, may I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Hi, I'll tell my ACCOA. I'm Ron Record. I'm down in Kingman, Arizona. I heard about this, so I'm sneaking in on you guys.
The boys from Kingman. Been through there more times than I care to think about.
Well, it's a whole other story. But
yes,
I was approached yesterday by the Las Vegas Henderson mission. They're looking at GMRS radios for their missionaries.
Yeah.
And he says one license under the mission.
No.
And I know. I said, I don't think so.
So you know what I did? And tell your missions do the same. So your mission president sends out a letter to his new missionaries when he finds out that they're coming.
Right.
I asked him to include in that letter that their family get a GMRS license before they come out.
That way everybody has under their own license.
Then they're covered. Yep.
And have him bring a radio with him.
And have him bring a radio. Yep.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
They are allowed. So that's how I did it up here. So he puts it on there. He puts it on there. Welcome to the Spokane mission letter.
Yeah. No, I like that. I'm going to talk about it tomorrow. But here in the state, we have our own net, which is it lacks right now, of course. And we just split our stake, and so I'm between colleagues, shall we say. It got released because I was out, but more than likely I'm going to come in.
Yep.
But we're looking at doing GMRS in our state too, because we're having problems getting people to get the ham license.
You're not. You're just not going to. You're not going to get people. I mean, most people, if they didn't have to take the test, they'd be more than happy to get their ham license.
Yeah. I mean, I understand.
The test is what stops them, and that's the beauty of GMRS.
Yes.
Yeah. They're doing it in Vegas everywhere. They're switching off to GMRS within the wards, and then.
Yeah, we had GMRS set up when I was down there before I moved up here. When I did the same thing in Vegas for 15 years. So.
Yeah, our problem in Kingman is we're pretty remote.
Yes, you are.
I've got one station on the ham, but on a good day, I can hit it. Yeah,
Yep.
repeater. So
Yep.
we're working on it, but that's another story. But some of my missionaries, they're way out in Peach Springs.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's my current calling. I'm out there on Peach Springs Branch helping out, and
Yep.
also want to have a supply reservation.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Way down the
Been there
bottom.
many a time.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there in a couple of weeks again. But the problem is we don't know how to communicate out of there.
Yeah, the only way you're going to do it is to get a repeater on top of the canyon.
Yeah, that's what I figured. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, there's no other way to do it.
Yeah, even
you know
Peach
what?
Springs-
You say that's not going to happen. You'd be amazed how many. So we have a ton of Indian tribes up here, a ton. And I've actually I've done presentations for a lot of the Indian tribes because same thing. They need to figure out how to communicate with their folks on the reservations.
Right.
And I've gone and talked to them. I've gotten a lot of the reservations to set up repeaters.
Well, I can try. That group out is pretty lazy.
I understand it. I know them well, but you know, it's like everything else. If they can see the need and really know that it'll be something to help, because they're very isolated too down there.
Yeah.
And so this is a way for them to be able to communicate outside. So
yeah. Well, if I can get it to then hook up into, let's say, a repeater in Peach Springs.
Yeah, even if you can get some individuals to pay for it and see if they'll give you a spot to put it up.
Right.
You know, same thing.
Yeah.
So
I work with a local club here. They're pretty cooperative on a lot of things.
Yeah. So yep.
Not based on possibilities, but okay. Well, that's good to know. I actually I've not done GMRS yet. I actually have my first little cheapo radio. So it's a Terra. I don't know how to program. I'm looking at the instructions. Man, that's good. So
yep, they can be.
Yeah, $100 down the drain there.
Trust me, it's not the dumb little buttons on the side. It's much easier.
Yep. Yeah, well, I'm hoping that I got a in my garage. I've got a J-pole sitting in there. I'm going to see if I can get on top of my house and then hook up to that.
Gotcha.
At least I get a little bit of range.
Gotcha. Yep.
I'll play with that.
All right.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you giving that idea. Yeah, I'll go back to Mission President and have them talk to his families. Because I understand.
But tell them they cannot do the one. They can't even get a license as a mission for GMRS. There's no way to even do that. So
yeah. Well, I understand.
If they wanted to, they can.
He bought 100 Bullfang radios already.
Gotcha.
So he got the cart before the horse.
Yep, I'm with you.
I'll talk to him tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I got to go into another Zoom meeting. I'm doing 2 Zoom meetings at once here. So.
Gotcha. Not a problem.
All right.
Take care.
Hey, Dave, quick question if I might.
Yeah.
Is there a point where the GMRS transitions to amateur radio?
Meaning?
At a stake level, area, region?
So like the slide showed, kind of the way we do it when we're getting people called, we kind of have a thing that we request. So the ward ECS has a minimum of a GMRS license. The ward communication specialist has GMRS and an amateur license because they're going to have to operate a little bit further to get to their stake in some cases. The stake has a minimum GMRS and amateur license, tech license. And then the council has GMRS amateur minimum general license. So that's kind of what we tell people when they get their calling of what they need to do.
Okay, so if the ward emergency communication specialist is a GMRS and amateur radio, and the stake is the same,
they can check in on any net they want. Because we run them simultaneous in an incident. They're all running in it.
Okay, so whatever works.
Yep.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, we've got our frequencies set up for both the council and the stake, so they know where to come for the council nets and all the rest of it.
Let me jump in real quick and then I'll get out of here.
Okay.
Yeah, my professional background is radio communications for 45, 50 years and involved with it and have vast professional experience. I am more than willing to do any type of technical support training if you ever wanted to do a session or anything on technical support, RF, electricity, emergency power, RF issues, RFI issues, tower site issues. The bulk of my experience is tower site work for public safety and business, etc. So I'm always interested in providing any type of technical support or consultation on technical topics that anybody would like.
All right, thank you.
Kevin, this is Steve. You want to put a plug in for the ERC Connect?
Yeah, actually, I put a few things out there that those that didn't have accounts yet, they can send an email to help desk at ERC Connect or IdahoERC.org, same thing, and you can get them set up. And it's in the chat.
So while we're still here, I'll ask Dave a quick question. How are you guys set up for digital over there, Dave? Are you guys working digital?
Oh yeah. Yep. We use a ton. We also use a ton of WinLink, all that fun stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that's what we do over here as well. So.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yep. I'm trying to right now. We've got all the church forms off of the Provident Living website for all the different. I think there's like 6 or 7 of them that the Area 70s and those folks would use during an incident. So I'm getting ready to send those over to the WinLink team and see if I can get those put on the forms folder. So
that'd be cool.
So I've got them so I can operate. I can use them and insert them. We've got an operator in the southeast that created a piece of software that you can use that actually will insert them for you. You just got to have the software running in the background. But I've got them all done. We've got them all done in HTML now, so we can get them over to the WinLink team and see if they can set them up in the forms folder. So hopefully they will, and then they'll just be there, and everybody will have them. So, but they're available. You can get them off of the Provident Living website. They're all right there. So.
Oh wow. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
What's the website?
It's providentliving.org. It's a church website. It's pretty much mainly for emergency preparedness is what it's set up for. It's a great website. Absolutely wonderful website.
Hey, David, when did you find it made sense to put up a repeater?
The day I got here.
Well, you said, for example, there used to be 50 repeaters there, and people found that they were useless. So when is it practical to actually put up?
So it's not that they were useless. It's kind of like amateur repeaters. So everybody, for some reason, thinks everybody's got to have their own. And even in amateur, we got more frequencies, but they're still limited for how many you got for repeater pairs. And every group decides they've got to have their own, and every individual family decides they've got to have their own. And before you know it, and at least in amateur, they're coordinated. So once they're used, they're used. You can't, if you start setting stuff up over the top of people, they've got some ability to kind of put the hammer down on it. With GMRS, it's not the case. And so what happens is people will go out. So, and I will even say this. So they'll go out and do the little retrievist thing where you got 2 handheld radios in a little box, and they call that a repeater. And yeah, it'll work for little stuff, but you put any kind of power behind that, any real use behind it, you're going to fry those things in about 2 minutes. And so they'll try that stuff and realize it's not worth what it takes to do it. And so they'll pull it back down, or they'll fry the radio, whatever the case is. And so they kind of on their own will take them down. We didn't ask them to take them down. They just did. It was kind of, they went through their little phase, and that was the end of it. And nobody uses them. Because, like with mine, people know there's a group associated with it. So, we have 200 people that check in a week on our nets when we do GMRS. So people know there's people associated with it. So where are they going to gravitate to? They're going to gravitate to the ones that they know in an emergency. There's somebody actually there. And so when you have all these repeaters, and you got it set at somebody's garage that's, down in a hole somewhere, and you got mountains all around them, it's not going to do any good anyway. So they take them down. So. I would say if there is no time to not have a GMRS repeater. I mean, if you're going to try and do any kind of communication with FRS GMRS, you have to have a repeater. If you're trying to cover any ground at all. And so the big thing is where's a good place to put it is the bigger thing, and what's it going to take to do that? Like even that group down in Richland that it's been on and we were talking about. So they've got one down there where literally a guy had a piece of property. There's no buildings. There's no nothing on it. So they went out and bought a little, I don't even know what you'd call it. It's like a 6x6x6 steel box that they literally just put a little pad of concrete, set this thing up with an antenna on it and solar panels. And it sits on this guy's property, but there's no power to it. There's nothing, but it's up on a hill and they can do it. And so that's how they run the repeater, and it runs great. They don't have any problem with it. It does absolutely wonderful. So, you know, it's just, can you get us a decent site? And once you do, just make sure you get decent equipment that, you know, like right now, I can't get to my repeater site right now because it's probably under about 18 feet of snow right now. But it's running just fine and doing everything I need it to do. But if you put a junk little repeater up there, it ain't gonna last. And so you'll be up trying to run up there and get to it every other 5 minutes of the day. So just make sure it's a good quality repeater and, you know, you're good to go.
Dave, this is Russ Denny. Hey, do you have recommendations for the repeaters? You know, ones that you know that are worth.
Kenwood or ICOM, stay away from Motorola.
Okay.
And I only say that because Motorola trying to get their software and programming stuff is an absolute freaking nightmare. And if you walk into a Motorola dealer distributor and say you're an amateur operator, they'll kick you out or shoot you, one of the two. So ICOM and Kenwood, and I would say even ICOM is probably, even depending on your distributor, ICOM is actually a little bit more open to dealing with just the normal Joe Blow off the street. But Kenwood or ICOM, either one. And you can find them all day and they're not real expensive. And they make a really good quality product that you, like mine. So like I said, mine's been up there for 10 years. I got one in Vegas that's been there for 20 years. Same repeater. It's never been changed.
Yeah.
And it just does its thing. So.
Yeah, we've put in rid of this one, and it's we're working modularly. We're going to try and relocate it and stuff to get it higher. So, but
it's like I tell everybody when I do my training: don't spend your money inside, spend it outside. Antenna, feed line, and antenna.
Yeah.
I can make a really good radio sound like a piece of garbage with junk antenna and feed line. I can take a really bad radio, make it sound really awesome with good feed line and a good antenna. Spend your money outside, not inside.
Yeah. Okay.
And a duplexer.
And a duplexer. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing goes along with that is funding that. How to, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, I've done stuff like right now. So we've got, just to give you an example, we've got a lot of equipment that's out and running. We've got stuff we're trying to set up. We're trying to set up a couple of our FM gateways and stuff like that. We're trying to get set up in some of our areas that are kind of remote to help them out. And, you know, I've got my folks that'll be more than happy to help out, but I just started a GoFundMe page and sent out an email to all my group and said, hey, if you can put $10 in, $10 will go a long way for this. And so it's been up for about a week now. I've already got $2,700 in it. You know, so if you let people know what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it, you'll get people just like everything else. They'll help out. So do what you can do and it'll all come together. Plus, trust me, you're doing the Lord's work, so it'll work out even more. He's a really good guy to have on your side.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Thank you very much for all that.
You bet. Well, Kevin, I hope I got everything you wanted.
You did awesome, and thanks so much. And I really do love your shirt.
Isn't that awesome? I have cards too, man. And the reason I did it, Kevin, is because like I would go and do stuff for like county emergency management groups and stuff, and I don't have a card. I don't have anything to really show, you know, what or who I am. And so I did some cards and stuff just kind of to give some recognition of what it is and who we are. And I'll tell you what, man, it makes all the difference in the world when I go talk to an emergency management group and stuff, because it puts something, you know, to what we do and who we are. And I didn't want to use the name of the church. I mean, with my name tag, it's a whole different story now. But no, I had a guy that he does promo stuff. I said, hey, what would it take? And he's like, I'll make them for you. So I gave him the logo and he made them.
Yeah, our logo from our.
I love it, man. It says everything we need it to say. So Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, it's very well known up in these parts of the world, let me tell you.
I'm glad it's working.
Yep, it is.
Well, you have a good evening and thanks again. We really
You
appreciate
too.
it.
Thanks everybody else for being on. Do you know, so what did we have at the top? Do you know how many we had?
The last time I looked was like 216 and we've gone above that.
Gotcha.
230. I have seen 230.
Cool. Yeah, I told you, I was getting calls from folks all over the place.
That's the thing with the internet. You can't quite keep things under wrap very well.
Oh, no, you cannot. No, you cannot. So.
Especially this stuff.
It was interesting. At 8 o'clock, it bumped up about almost another 100.
I think, well, we
Time
were
change.
expecting outside of our area code except for Dave. And so that confused a few people. So
Yeah, it was time change, yep.
So next time we might include the time zone just in case it happens again.
Yeah, no, it will. I have it with my monthly one. I've got people all the way from New York to get on mine monthly, on the one I do for the area up here, so.
I'd like to see you do one with, you know, the plastic table and your telephone on it. I love that.
Oh, dude, it is awesome. It is. Tell you what, you want to open some eyes, just do that. And I'll tell you what, I think I've had more reaction from spouses than I have actual leadership, because guess who's going to get stuck in the middle of that? You know, and it's just like the one that happened a couple of weeks ago. The wife of the first counselor is like, you and I are going to have a conversation when we get home. And he now has a mobile base in his car.
If you put a video together on that could be used, that would be awesome.
Oh, I'll tell you what, maybe I'll do it the next time I do one. I'll have somebody videotape it while we do it, because it's, I tell you what, like I said, that's my one. I've always thought, how do we do this? Because there's no way to really do it. And then I'm sitting in that meeting 3 or 4 years ago with those three wards, and I'm like, it just hit me, and I'm like, I'm going to try this. So I said, who's the highest ranking person here? So we had a bishop in, and I did it to him. And I'll tell you what, everybody in the room kind of went, oh my heck. They didn't, you don't realize it till you see it. And his wife, I've actually had wives cry when they've seen what's going on in their husband's phone in the meeting.
Well, I
they
know
get really fast.
He's going to say, "Here, honey, would you do this? I've got things to do."
Yeah, it's exactly right. So, yeah, it's like I said, I put it in my top 3 of revelations that I've had since I've been in this calling, because it has been a huge tool.
And it's legal. I've been tempted to buy a Chinese jammer so I could walk in a meeting and secretly turn it on and say, okay.
Oh, I'm with you with that. Yeah, so I actually thought about that too, Kevin. But this one, I think this one actually does better, because even if their phone is working, it doesn't matter. They still can't do it.
Different circumstance, but it still arrives at home, I think.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've thought about doing the same thing.
If I do, I won't admit to it.
Yeah. Here's to the Chinese for those kinds of things. So,
you have a good evening.
You too, Kevin. Good seeing you guys again. Take care.
All right, we'll see you.
Good night, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you on the phone someday.
All right. Talk to you, Steve.
Bye-bye.
Recording